The ships appeared on a Tuesday morning. They came out of nowhere, massive and silver, hanging in Earth's orbit like new moons. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the screens in disbelief. Humanity had wondered for centuries if they were alone in the universe. Now, they had their answer. The aliens called themselves Valorians. They looked almost human, tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed too large for their faces. Their leader, High Commander Thrace, spoke perfect English when he made contact. "People of Earth," Thrace said, his face filling every screen on the planet. "We come in peace. We have traveled far to meet you. We offer friendship, knowledge, and technology. Together, we can build a better future." The world celebrated. After all the wars and struggles, humanity finally had proof they weren't alone. Politicians lined up to shake Thrace's hand. Scientists begged to study Valorian technology. Jake Morrison was chosen to lead the diplomatic team at Horizon Gate, the new space station built specifically for these meetings. Dr. Amy Richardson was part of that team. She was a biologist, fascinated by alien life. She spent her days studying Valorian culture and biology. But as the weeks passed, she noticed strange things. The Valorians asked too many questions about Earth's military. They wanted detailed maps of every city, every factory, every power plant. When Amy mentioned this to Jake, he frowned. "I've noticed it too," Jake said quietly. They were alone in the observation deck, watching Earth spin below them. "But the politicians want this partnership. They say we're being paranoid." Admiral Kevin Blake was more direct. He was an old military man who had seen too many wars to trust easily. "Something's wrong," he told his officers. "Keep the fleet ready. I don't care what the politicians say." But 6 months after first contact, it was too late. It happened during the Unity Festival, a massive celebration planned across Earth and its colonies. Valorian guests were everywhere, mingling with humans, sharing their culture. The parties were in full swing when the devices activated. Amy was on Horizon Gate when the lights went out. Every screen went dark. Every computer died. She felt the station shudder and grabbed a railing to steady herself. Through the windows, she saw the worst sight of her life. Valorian warships were appearing everywhere, dozens of them, then hundreds. They had been hiding, cloaked by technology. Humanity didn't understand. Now they revealed themselves, weapons charging with an eerie blue light. Jake's ship was one of the first hit. The electromagnetic pulse fried every system. His crew floated helplessly as Valorian boarding craft attached to the hull. He heard the metal screech as they cut through. His hand went to his sidearm, but he knew it was pointless. On Earth, the invasion was swift and brutal. Valorian soldiers poured from landing craft in every major city. They had mapped everything, knew every defensive position, every military base. Humanity's armies fought back with everything they had, but the Valorians had better weapons, better armor, better everything. Commander Lisa Carter watched from Mars as the Red Planet's small defense force was overwhelmed in minutes. She commanded a mining operation, not a military base. Her security team had basic weapons against soldiers who could shrug off bullets like raindrops. She ordered her people to surrender. There was no point in dying for nothing. Within 72 hours, it was over. Earth had fallen. Mars had fallen. The lunar colonies had fallen. Valorian flags flew over every human settlement in the solar system. High Commander Thrace appeared on the screens again. This time, his voice wasn't friendly. It was cold and businesslike. "Humans," he said, "your resistance has ended. Your species now belongs to the Valorian Empire. You will work. You will obey. Resistance will be punished. Accept your new purpose, and you will be treated fairly. Fight, and you will suffer." The neural collars came next. Small silver bands placed around every human neck, adult and child alike. They looked harmless, almost like jewelry. But Amy learned quickly what they did. Disobey an order, and pain shot through your body like lightning. Try to remove the collar, and the pain was worse. Try too hard, and the collar killed you. Jake Morrison was processed with his crew on Horizon Gate. Valorian guards stripped them of their uniforms and gave them simple, gray coveralls. A technician placed the collar around Jake's neck. It felt cold against his skin. "You commanded a ship," the technician said, checking his datapad. "Good. You will work in the shipyards. Your engineering knowledge will be useful." Jake wanted to fight. He wanted to scream and punch and rage against this nightmare. But when he tensed his muscles, the collar sensed his aggression. Pain exploded in his skull. He fell to his knees, gasping. "You will learn," the technician said without emotion. They all learn. Amy found herself assigned to a research facility. The Valorians wanted human scientists to help them understand Earth's biology better. She worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. The collar punished her if she worked too slowly. Lisa Carter was sent to an asteroid mine. She spent her days in a spacesuit, drilling into rock for minerals the Valorians needed. The work was backbreaking. People died every day from accidents or exhaustion. The Valorians didn't care. There were always more humans to replace the dead ones. Admiral Blake was executed. The Valorians made an example of him, broadcasting his death to every human in the solar system. He had tried to organize resistance, even with the collar. He paid for it with his life. His last words were defiant. "Humans don't stay slaves forever." The Valorians laughed at that. They had enslaved dozens of species across their empire. Humans were just the latest. They were nothing special, just another workforce to exploit. But in the darkness of the work camps, in the whispers between exhausted workers, in the eyes of people who had lost everything, something began to grow. It wasn't hope. Hope was for people who had something to lose. This was something darker, something angrier. This was the beginning of humanity's answer. 3 years passed like a slow nightmare. Nicole Hayes no longer remembered what freedom felt like. She worked in the lithium mines of Kronos 7, an asteroid so far from Earth that the sun was just another star. Every day was the same. Wake in the barracks, eat the tasteless protein paste, put on the mining suit, work for 14 hours, sleep, repeat. The collar around her neck had become part of her body. She barely noticed it anymore, except when it hurt her. And it hurt often. Moved too slowly, and pain shot through her nerves. Talk back to a guard, and the pain was worse. Try to rest when you weren't supposed to, and you wished for death. Nicole had watched people die. So many people. Some from accidents. Some from exhaustion. Some from trying to remove their collars. The Valorians would leave the bodies where they fell for a few hours as a lesson to the others. Then they would drag them away and bring in new workers. She remembered being a teacher before the invasion. She had taught children about math and science. Now she taught herself how to hate properly, how to keep that hate burning inside without letting it show on her face. The Valorians punished visible anger almost as much as disobedience. On Earth, Jake Morrison was learning the same lesson. He worked in the shipyards, building Valorian vessels with human hands and human knowledge. The Valorians were efficient. They used humanity's own engineering skills to expand their empire. Jake helped build the ships that would conquer other worlds, enslave other species. At night, he lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling. The shipyards had thousands of workers, all human, all collared, all broken in different ways. Some had given up completely. They worked like robots, their eyes empty. Others still had fire inside, but they hid it well. Jake hid his fire. He also hid something else. A small piece of Valorian technology he had stolen from the shipyard. It was risky. If he was caught, he would die. But he had to try. He had to believe that somewhere, someone was fighting back. Someone was. Amy Richardson had spent 3 years pretending to be a loyal worker, while stealing every piece of information she could. The research facility where she worked gave her access to Valorian computers and technology. She learned their language. She studied their systems, and slowly, carefully, she found weaknesses. The neural collars all connected to a central network. Every collar reported back to Valorian control stations. The system was massive and complex. But Amy was patient. She worked through the code line by line during her rare free moments. The collar on her own neck monitored her, but it couldn't read her thoughts. Not yet. Anyway, she made a discovery that changed everything. The Valorian homeworld, Valoria Prime, controlled the entire network. Every collar, every ship, every weapon system traced back to massive computers on that distant planet. If someone could reach those computers and destroy them, the entire empire might collapse. Amy managed to send this information out using stolen communication equipment. She didn't know if anyone received it. She couldn't risk checking. But she had to hope. Lisa Carter received it on Mars. She had spent 3 years organizing a resistance cell from inside the mining operation. It wasn't much. 20 people she trusted. They met in secret, used hand signals to communicate, and slowly gathered weapons and supplies. The collars made it difficult, but not impossible. When Amy's message reached her through a chain of secret contacts, Lisa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly, but possibility. A target. A plan. Something to work toward besides survival. She wasn't the only one. Across the solar system and beyond, small groups of humans were organizing. Most didn't know about each other. Communications were monitored. Trust was dangerous, but humans are good at one thing. They're good at being stubborn. Jake Morrison made contact with these groups using the stolen technology he had been working on. It took him a year to build a small quantum transmitter, another 6 months to connect with resistance cells across Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. When he finally heard other human voices talking about freedom instead of surrender, he almost cried. "This is Morrison," he transmitted one night. "Former Captain, Earth Defense Fleet. If you're hearing this, you're not alone." The responses came slowly. A few at first. Then more. By the end of the month, Jake had connected with 17 different resistance groups. They were small. They were weak. They had almost no weapons and barely any ships. But they were organized now. They had a network. Admiral Blake's son, Danny Blake, was part of that network. He had watched his father die. He had spent 3 years in the factories, building Valorian weapons. Now he used those weapons skills to build bombs instead. Small ones at first, just enough to destroy equipment or cause delays. The Valorians punished the workers when sabotage happened, but Danny didn't stop. Neither did the others. The resistance spread like a slow fire. A technician would sabotage a power plant. A miner would cause a tunnel collapse. A worker would poison the food supply for Valorian guards. The acts were small, but they added up. Production slowed. Accidents increased. The Valorians noticed, but couldn't stop it. There were billions of humans. They couldn't watch everyone all the time. Nicole Hayes joined the resistance on Kronos 7 after she watched something that broke her last hesitation. A Valorian guard shot a child. The boy was 7 years old. He had dropped a crate of minerals because he was too small and weak to carry it. The guard didn't even hesitate. He just pulled out his weapon and fired. The boy's mother screamed. The collar punished her for it. She screamed anyway, falling to her knees in pain. Other workers moved to help, but the collars stopped them too. Everyone stood frozen, watching a mother cry over her dead child while electricity burned through their nerves. Nicole felt something snap inside her. The pain from the collar didn't matter anymore. She charged at the guard. Others followed her without thinking. There were 50 humans and 1 Valorian. They tore him apart with their bare hands even as the collars fried their nervous systems. More guards came. They killed 15 humans before the rest were forced to stop. Nicole survived. Barely. She was punished for a week in an isolation cell, where the collar delivered random shocks day and night. When she came out, she was different. The fear was gone. There was only anger left. Lisa Carter heard about the uprising on Kronos 7. It had failed, but it proved something important. Humans could fight back. Even with the collars. Even against better weapons. If they were angry enough, they could push through the pain. She sent a message to Jake Morrison and the other resistance leaders. We need to stop hiding. We need to start hitting them harder. Jake agreed. Amy sent them schematics she had stolen. Collar disruptors. Not perfect, but enough to weaken the control systems. Danny Blake figured out how to build them from common parts found in Valorian facilities. Within months, hundreds of resistance fighters were free from the collars. They stayed in their jobs, pretended to still be controlled. But they were free. And free humans were dangerous. The resistance stole ships. Not many at first. Just a few small craft. Then bigger ones. They raided Valorian supply depots and military bases. The attacks were coordinated across the solar system. The Valorians started losing people and equipment. High Commander Thrace called it terrorism. He ordered harsh punishments. For every Valorian killed, 10 humans would die. But the resistance didn't stop. They just got smarter, faster, angrier. Jake Morrison spoke to the resistance leaders in a secret meeting on Europa. The small moon had become the center of their operations. They had hidden facilities under the ice where the Valorians didn't look. We can't win by fighting small battles, Jake said. We need to hit them where it hurts. We need to hit Valoria Prime. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. It was suicide. But Lisa Carter stood up. Then we die free instead of living as slaves. I'm in. One by one, the others agreed. They would build a fleet. They would reach Valoria Prime. And they would burn the Valorian Empire to ashes or die trying. Humanity's answer was taking shape. The factories hummed day and night. But now they weren't just building Valorian equipment. Hidden behind false walls and under layers of security. Humans were building their own weapons. Ships. Missiles. Tools of war that the Valorians wouldn't see coming. Jake Morrison walked through the secret facility on Europa with a mixture of pride and fear. 3 years of planning had led to this. The ice caves had been expanded into a full shipyard. Stolen Valorian technology mixed with human engineering created something new. Something deadly. How many ships do we have? He asked Commander Ryan Davis. Ryan was a former Marine who had spent 2 years in the mining pits before escaping. He was hard now, all sharp edges and cold eyes. The things he had seen had burned away whatever mercy he once had. 37 that can fight, Ryan said. Another dozen for support. It's not much against the Valorian Empire. It's enough to reach Valoria Prime, Jake replied. That's all we need. Lisa Carter joined them at the observation window. Below, workers were loading weapons onto a battleship they had named Retribution. It was fitting. The ship was built from the hull of a captured Valorian cruiser, but humans had modified it with every weapon they could mount. Amy sent new data, Lisa said, holding up a data pad. She's confirmed the location of the primary control hub. It's in orbit around Valoria Prime. If we destroy it, every neural collar in the Empire stops working. Every enslaved species goes free, Jake said quietly. That's billions of people. That's the goal, Ryan said. But we need to get there first. They had been planning the route for months. Amy Richardson had provided detailed maps of Valorian territory from her position inside their research network. She was still on Earth, still collared, still pretending to be a loyal worker. But she was humanity's most valuable spy. Nicole Hayes arrived at Europa 2 weeks before the fleet was scheduled to launch. She came with 50 other freed miners from Kronos 7. All of them had volunteered to join the attack. All of them knew they probably wouldn't survive. Jake interviewed her personally. She sat across from him in a small office, her hands steady but her eyes burning with barely controlled rage. "Why do you want to fight?" Jake asked. It was a standard question, but her answer wasn't standard. "I watched them kill a child," Nicole said. "I watched them break people until there was nothing left. I spent 3 years being their slave. Now, I want to watch them burn." Jake saw that rage in so many faces now. The resistance wasn't fighting for peace or justice. They were fighting for revenge. He wondered sometimes if that made them as bad as the Valorians. Then he remembered the collar around his neck for 3 years and decided he didn't care. "You're in," he said. "Report to combat training with Commander Davis." Ryan Davis ran the combat training with brutal efficiency. He didn't teach his people to fight honorably. He taught them to fight to win. Use every advantage. Strike when the enemy is weak. Show no mercy because the Valorians had shown none. "They think we're weak," Ryan told his trainees. "They think 3 years of slavery broke us. They're wrong. It made us harder. It made us willing to do what they never expected." The training was harsh. People were injured. Some quit, but most stayed and learned. They learned how to board enemy ships, how to fight in zero gravity, how to kill efficiently with whatever weapon they had. Danny Blake worked in the weapons development section. He had his father's mind for tactics and his own gift for explosives. The bombs he designed weren't meant to disable Valorian ships. They were meant to destroy them completely. "These will punch through their armor," Danny explained to Jake, showing him a new torpedo design. "We stole their shield technology and reversed it. Their own defenses won't stop these." "Will we have enough?" Jake asked. "Enough to hurt them badly," Danny said. "Whether it's enough to win, we'll find out." Amy Richardson continued her work from Earth. She couldn't join the fleet, but she could help them. She mapped the Valorian defense networks. She found weaknesses in their patrol patterns. She even managed to hack into their communication system and plant false reports. When she wasn't working for the Valorians, she worked for humanity. She slept 3 hours a night. The collar on her neck monitored her stress levels, but she had learned to control them. She had become very good at lying. She sent Jake one final message before the fleet launched. "I've planted a virus in the Valorian military network. When you reach Valoria Prime and start your attack, I'll activate it. Their communications will be disrupted for approximately 30 minutes. Make it count." Jake read the message and felt a wave of gratitude and guilt. Amy was risking her life with every transmission. If the Valorians caught her, she would die slowly and painfully. But she kept working anyway. The fleet came together in the shadow of Saturn's rings. 37 warships, all crewed by humans who had been slaves. They looked at Valorian military discipline and threw it away. They wore whatever they wanted. They painted their ships with angry slogans and symbols of Earth. They prepared for war their own way. Jake Morrison took command of the Retribution and addressed the fleet over the communication network. Thousands of people listened to his words. 3 years ago, the Valorians made us slaves, he said. They thought we would break. They thought we would forget who we were. They were wrong. We're still human. We still remember what freedom feels like. And now we're going to remind them what happens when you make humanity angry. Cheers erupted across the fleet. Not happy cheers. Angry ones. Hungry ones. These were people who had nothing left to lose and everything to take back. Lisa Carter commanded the assault carrier Freedom's Price. Her ship was loaded with boarding craft and Marines ready to storm Valorian facilities. She looked at her crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. We're not going to Valoria Prime to negotiate, she told them. We're going there to destroy them. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. Nobody left. Nicole Hayes was assigned to a strike team led by Ryan Davis. Their job was to board the control hub station and plant explosives. It was the most dangerous mission in the entire operation. She volunteered immediately. You know this is probably suicide, Ryan said when he reviewed her file. I know, Nicole replied. But I'm going anyway. Ryan nodded. He understood. They all did. Admiral Kevin Blake's memory hung over the fleet like a ghost. His son Danny had made sure everyone knew what his father said before he died. Humans don't stay slaves forever. It had become their motto, their promise. The night before launch, Jake stood alone on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at Earth in the distance. It was still beautiful. Still blue and green beneath the Valorian occupation. He wondered if he would ever see it again. He wondered if what they were about to do would save humanity or damn them. Then he thought about the collar he had worn for 3 years. The pain, the humiliation, the helplessness. He thought about all the people who had died as slaves, all the children who would grow up in chains if humanity didn't act. The doubt disappeared. They had to do this, whatever the cost, whatever they became in the process. All ships, he transmitted to the fleet. Prepare for faster-than-light jump. Target coordinates. Valoria Prime. We launch in 1 hour. The responses came back one by one. Every ship confirmed ready. Every captain confirmed willing. Humanity's answer was ready to be delivered. Ryan Davis gathered his Marines for a final briefing. Remember, he said, we're not taking prisoners. We're not showing mercy. We're showing them what happens when you enslave humanity. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel exactly on schedule. Behind them, Earth and the solar system disappeared. Ahead of them, somewhere in the darkness, was Valoria Prime. Humanity's rage was on its way. The journey to Valoria Prime took 3 weeks. The fleet traveled through Valorian space, using stolen access codes that Amy Richardson had provided. They passed through 6 different systems without being detected. They were lucky. Or maybe the Valorians just couldn't imagine that their slaves would dare to attack them. On the 2nd week, they encountered a Valorian patrol. 3 small ships, guarding a mining operation. Jake Morrison gave the order without hesitation. Destroy them, no survivors. The battle lasted 90 seconds. Human ships overwhelmed the patrol with concentrated fire. The Valorian vessels exploded in bright flashes. No distress signals went out. The fleet moved on. Lisa Carter watched from the bridge of Freedom's Price as they destroyed 2 more patrols in the following days. Each time, the orders were the same. Complete destruction. No warnings. No mercy. She felt something twist inside her chest, but she pushed it away. This was war. This was survival. Ryan Davis spent the journey training his Marines in the cargo bay. They practiced boarding procedures over and over. Plant the explosives. Clear the rooms. Move fast. Kill faster. He drove them hard because he knew the control hub would be heavily defended. Nicole Hayes practiced with her strike team. She had learned to handle weapons in 0 gravity. She had learned to fight through pain and fear. She had learned that hesitation got you killed. The other members of her team were just like her. Former slaves who had become soldiers. Are you scared? One of them asked her, the night before they reached Valoria Prime. Terrified, Nicole admitted. But I'm more angry than scared. High Commander Thrace finally realized something was wrong when 3 of his patrol groups failed to report in. He sent scouts to investigate. They found wreckage and debris. No survivors. No witnesses. Just destruction. He called his military advisors to an emergency meeting on Valoria Prime. The massive planet hung in space like a blue and green jewel, surrounded by orbital stations and defense platforms. It was the heart of the Empire. It had never been attacked. Not in 1,000 years. Who could have done this? One advisor asked. It must be the humans, Thrace said slowly. But that's impossible. They're slaves. They have no fleet, no weapons. Sir, we should increase security around the homeworld, another advisor suggested. Thrace agreed, but he was already too late. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel At the edge of the Valoria Prime system, all 37 ships appeared at once, their weapons already charged. Jake Morrison sat in the captain's chair of the Retribution and looked at the displays showing Valoria Prime ahead. The planet was beautiful, populated by billions of Valorians. He thought about the billions of humans they had enslaved, the thousands they had killed. The children, like the one Nicole had watched, die. All ships, he transmitted. This is it. No holding back. We came here to destroy the control hub and free every slave in the galaxy. Whatever it takes. Whatever the cost. The fleet accelerated toward the planet. Valorian defense platforms detected them and began firing. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between them. The human ships took hits, but they kept coming. They had been built to absorb punishment and deal it back twice as hard. Danny Blake's torpedoes proved their worth. They punched through Valorian shields like they weren't there. Defense platforms exploded one after another. The Valorians had never faced weapons designed specifically to counter their technology. Amy Richardson activated her virus from Earth. Across Valoria Prime's orbit, communication systems started failing. Ships couldn't coordinate. Defense platforms couldn't share targeting data. For 30 minutes, the Valorian defense was blind and deaf. The human fleet poured through the gap like water through a broken dam. Lisa Carter's carrier launched its boarding craft toward the control hub station. It was a massive structure in geosynchronous orbit above the Valorian capital city. The station was as big as a small moon, covered in weapons and armor. All fighters, all bombers, cover the boarding craft, Lisa ordered. The space battle turned brutal. Valorian military ships arrived from all over the system. They outnumbered the human fleet 3-1. But the humans fought with a desperation that shocked the Valorians. Ships that lost their weapons rammed enemy vessels. Damaged ships used themselves as shields for healthy ones. Jake Morrison's Retribution traded fire with a Valorian battleship twice its size. The enemy ship hammered them with everything it had. Hull plating melted. Corridors lost atmosphere. People died at their stations. But the Retribution kept fighting. Jake kept giving orders, even as the bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Target their engines, he said. All remaining weapons. Fire. The Retribution's final torpedo salvo hit the Valorian battleship's power core. The explosion was bright enough to light up half the system. But the Retribution was too close. The shockwave threw the human ship spinning. Systems failed across the board. Report. Jake demanded. We're alive, his weapons officer said. Barely. We have no main power. No weapons. But we're alive. Ryan Davis and his Marines reached the control hub station along with Nicole Hayes' strike team. They cut through the outer hull and poured into the corridors. Valorian guards were waiting. The fighting was close and vicious. Ryan moved through the station like death itself. His Marines followed his lead. They cleared room after room. When they ran out of ammunition, they used Valorian weapons. When those ran out, they used anything they could find. The rage that had been building for 3 years came out in that station. Nicole's team fought their way toward the neural control center. She watched teammates die beside her. She kept moving. A Valorian soldier shot her in the leg. She killed him and kept moving. The pain didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered except reaching that control center. They found it deep in the station's core. A massive room filled with computers and control systems. This was where every collar in the Empire was monitored and controlled. This was the source of humanity's chains. Plant the charges, Ryan ordered. His Marines spread out, attaching explosives to every critical system. Nicole helped place the bombs while fighting off Valorian defenders. Her hands shook. She was losing blood from her leg wound. But she worked fast. They all did. Above the planet, the space battle continued. The human fleet was being destroyed, ship by ship. They had inflicted terrible damage on the Valorians, but they were losing. Jake Morrison knew it. Lisa Carter knew it. Everyone knew it. All ships, Jake transmitted. If you can still fight, give the strike teams more time. Whatever it takes. The remaining human ships threw themselves at the Valorian fleet with suicidal determination. They bought Ryan Davis the minutes he needed. In the control center, the last charge was placed. Ryan looked at his Marines. Half of them were dead. The rest were wounded. They had done their job. Activate the charges, he said, and transmit on all Valorian frequencies. I want them to hear this. The transmission went out. Ryan's voice filled every Valorian communication channel in the system. You made us slaves. You thought we were weak. You were wrong. This is humanity's answer. The charges detonated. The control center exploded. The entire station shuddered. And then, something terrible happened. Amy Richardson had warned them about the feedback. When the control network collapsed, it would loop back through the Valorian neural systems. Every Valorian, with cybernetic implants, would be affected. She had begged Jake to find another way. But there was no other way. Not one that would work. The feedback pulse spread from the station across the entire planet. On Valoria Prime, billions of Valorians had neural implants. They used them for communication, for computing, for everyday life. When the pulse hit them, it burned through their brains like lightning. Jake Morrison watched from the damaged retribution as the pulse spread across the planet below. He knew what was happening. Amy had told him the numbers. Approximately 40% of the planet's population would die. God forgive us, he whispered. Lisa Carter heard the transmission from the planet's surface. Emergency broadcasts. Hospitals overwhelmed. Bodies in the streets. Chaos and death on a scale that humanity had suffered under Valorian rule. But this time, humans had caused it. The Valorian defense fleet faltered. Ships lost coordination. Some retreated. Others just stopped fighting. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was visible below them. A planet dying from the pulse that was meant to free the slaves. Nicole Hayes watched from the control hub station as data scrolled across the damaged monitors. Every caller in the Empire had gone dead. Billions of enslaved beings across hundreds of worlds were suddenly free. Free because of humanity's rage. Free because of a weapon that had killed billions of Valorians. Ryan Davis transmitted to the fleet. Mission accomplished. The control hub is destroyed. All slaves are free. The human ships that could still move began to withdraw. They limped away from Valoria Prime. Damaged and broken, but victorious. Behind them, the Valorian Empire was collapsing. Slave revolts erupted everywhere. The military was in chaos. The homeworld was dying. Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. They had won. They had freed humanity and every other enslaved species. But the price was written across the planet below, in numbers too large to comprehend. What have we done? He asked the empty bridge. Nobody answered. There was no good answer. The fleet returned to Earth 3 months after the battle. Only 19 ships made it back. The retribution was barely holding together. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge as his ship limped into orbit, and he saw something he hadn't expected. Celebrations. Every remaining human ship and station was lit up. Fireworks exploded in Earth's orbit. Messages flooded their communications. Humanity was free. The Valorian Empire was gone. People were crying and cheering and celebrating their liberation. Jake felt sick watching it. He knew what they had done to achieve this freedom. He had the numbers memorized. 2.3 billion Valorian civilians dead from the neural feedback. Another billion dead in the chaos that followed. Entire cities destroyed as enslaved species revolted across the Empire. Lisa Carter brought her carrier into dock at the repaired Horizon Gate station. She was met by government officials and military leaders. They shook her hand. They called her a hero. She smiled for the cameras and felt empty inside. That night, she stood alone in her quarters and stared at her reflection. She barely recognized herself. She had been a mining supervisor before the invasion. Now, she was a war hero. A liberator. Someone who had helped kill billions of people. They were the enemy, she whispered to herself. They enslaved us. They killed our people. But the words felt hollow. She had seen the footage from Valoria Prime. The hospitals overflowing. The children who died when their parents' implants fried. The elderly who fell dead in the streets. Not soldiers, civilians. Nicole Hayes didn't return to Earth. Her injuries from the battle required treatment at the military hospital on Mars. She lay in a bed and stared at the ceiling while doctors worked on her damaged leg. The collar was gone from her neck. She was free, but she didn't feel free. She dreamed every night about the child she had watched die on Kronos 7. Then she dreamed about Valorian children dying on their homeworld. In her dreams, they all looked the same, small and innocent, and dead because of things adults had done. Ryan Davis was given a medal for his actions at the control hub. He stood at attention while a general pinned it to his chest. He gave a short speech about duty and sacrifice. Then he went back to his quarters and drank until he passed out. He did that every night for 2 weeks. The celebrations on Earth lasted for months. Humanity had survived. They had beaten an empire that enslaved dozens of species. They had proven that humans couldn't be kept in chains. The story spread across the galaxy. Other species heard what Earth had done and saw humanity differently now. Some saw them as liberators. The Kronothi people sent a delegation to thank Earth for destroying the Valorians. They had been slaves for 3 generations. Now, they were free. Dozens of other species sent similar messages. Humanity had broken their chains. But other species saw something different. They saw a race that had committed genocide. They saw ships full of angry humans who had destroyed a homeworld and killed billions. They saw monsters wearing human faces. The Confederation of Free Worlds formed from the remnants of the Valorian Empire. 23 freed species joined together to create a new alliance. They invited humanity to join them. The invitation came with conditions. Earth would have to answer questions about what happened at Valoria Prime. Jake Morrison was called to testify before the Confederation Council. He stood in front of representatives from species he had never met and told them what happened. He didn't lie. He didn't make excuses. We destroyed the control hub knowing it would cause feedback through the Valorian neural network, he said. We knew civilians would die. We did it anyway because it was the only way to free everyone. Was it right? I don't know. But I would do it again. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species praised Earth's actions. Others condemned them. The debate lasted for weeks. In the end, the Confederation voted. Humanity would not be allowed to join. Too many species feared what humans might do if threatened again. Amy Richardson published a detailed report on what happened. She had spent 3 months analyzing the data from Valoria Prime. The numbers were worse than initial estimates. The feedback hadn't just killed people immediately. It had damaged infrastructure across the planet. Power grids failed. Life support systems in underground cities stopped working. The death toll kept rising for months. We became what we fought against. Amy wrote in her conclusion. The Valorians enslaved other species. We killed billions. Both are unforgivable. Both are understandable given the circumstances. But understanding doesn't equal forgiveness. The report caused riots on Earth. Some people called Amy a traitor. Others agreed with her. Human society split into 2 camps. Those who believed the attack on Valoria Prime was justified and necessary, and those who believed humanity had crossed a line that should never be crossed. Lisa Carter spoke publicly for the first time 6 months after returning home. She gave an interview that was broadcast across Earth and its colonies. We were slaves for 3 years, she said. In that time, I watched people die from exhaustion and abuse. I watched the Valorians treat us like animals. When we had the chance to fight back, we took it. Did we go too far? Maybe. But I remember what it felt like to wear that collar. I remember the pain and the helplessness. Given the same choice, I think I would do it again. Does that make me a monster? Probably. But I'm a free monster now. The interview went viral. Some people hated her for it. Others understood. The galaxy watched and formed their own opinions about humanity. Danny Blake went to visit his father's memorial on Earth. Admiral Kevin Blake had been right. Humans don't stay slaves forever. But Danny wondered what his father would think of how they won their freedom. Would he be proud? Would he be horrified? We did what we had to do, Danny said to the memorial stone. I hope you understand. 10 years passed. Earth rebuilt. The solar system flourished. Humanity spread to new worlds and established colonies across space. They built the strongest military in the known galaxy. Every human ship was equipped with weapons that could devastate entire fleets. Every defense station could withstand attacks that would destroy planets. The message was clear. Never again. Never again would humanity be enslaved. Never again would they be caught unprepared. If anyone tried, Earth's response would be overwhelming and final. The Retribution was preserved as a museum ship in orbit around Earth. People came to tour it and learn about the Battle of Valoria Prime. They walked through corridors where people had died. They stood on the bridge where Jake Morrison had given the orders that freed billions and killed billions. Jake Morrison retired from military service. He bought a small house in the countryside and tried to live a quiet life. But people recognized him. Some thanked him. Some called him a murderer. He stopped going into town after a while. A journalist found him one day and asked for an interview. Jake almost refused. But something made him agree. Maybe he needed to say it one more time. Maybe he needed people to understand. Do you regret what you did? The journalist asked. Jake thought for a long time before answering. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that billions of people died. I regret that we became capable of that level of destruction. But do I regret fighting back? Do I regret freeing humanity and every other enslaved species? No. I don't regret that. Some people call you a war criminal, the journalist said. They're probably right, Jake admitted. We committed genocide. There's no way around that fact. But the alternative was staying slaves until we died out. We chose survival. History will judge whether that choice was right or wrong. I've made my peace with it. The interview ended with one final question. If another species tried to enslave humanity today, what would Earth do? Rube. Quote, when we con, Jake's answer was simple. We'd destroy them. Completely. Utterly. Without hesitation. That's who we are now. We're the species that broke the Valorian Empire. We're the species that will burn entire worlds before we wear chains again. Let the galaxy know that. Let them understand what happens when you try to enslave humanity. The interview spread across human space and beyond. Some species saw it as a threat. Others saw it as a promise. Earth would never be conquered again. Nicole Hayes became a teacher again. She taught history to children on Mars. When she reached the lesson about the Valorian War, she always made sure to tell the whole story. The slavery, the resistance, the battle, the deaths, all of it. We won our freedom, she told her students. But freedom has a price. We paid it with blood and rage and the lives of billions. Some say we were heroes. Some say we were monsters. The truth is we were both. Remember that. Remember what we're capable of when we're pushed too far. A memorial was built on Earth for all the humans who died during the Valorian occupation. Another memorial was built next to it for the Valorian civilians who died in the feedback pulse. They stood together, two monuments to the cost of war and the price of freedom. Lisa Carter visited both memorials on the anniversary of the battle. She laid flowers at each one. She had learned to live with what she had done. not to forgive herself, not to forget, but to live with it. We were slaves, she said to the Valorian memorial. You made us that way. We fought back. We became something terrible in the process. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't forgive myself. But I won't apologize for surviving. Humanity continued to grow and expand. They joined trade agreements with other species. They shared technology. They formed alliances. But everyone remembered what Earth had done to Valoria Prime. Everyone knew what humans were capable of when threatened. The galaxy learned to respect humanity. Not out of love or admiration. Out of fear. Fear that if they pushed too hard, if they threatened too much, humanity would answer with rage that could wipe everything away. And humanity lived with that reputation. They carried it like a scar. A reminder of what they had been forced to become. A warning to anyone who might try to enslave them again. A young student asked Jake Morrison one more question in his final interview before he died. Was it worth it? Everything you did, everything that happened, was freedom worth that price? Jake Morrison thought about the collar around his neck. He thought about the people who died as slaves. He thought about the children on Valoria Prime, who never got to grow up. He thought about humanity's survival and the cost of that survival. Ask me again in 100 years, he said. Maybe by then, someone will know the answer.